What's up, everyone? Keenan Allen here, aka the Fantasy Football Geek from DFS Army, and I'm excited to introduce our first ever DFS Army millionaire, Bobbywow, aka Bobby Klinkert. What's up, my man?
Hey, what's up, man? Doing pretty well. How are you?
Oh my God, I'm through the moon. I feel like I won $1 million. I have to tell you, I can't wait to ask you all about the experience, putting this lineup together, and all of that. But first of all, man, congratulations on this life-changing win. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, thanks a ton. It's still kind of surreal, and my wife still thinks she's being punked. When I told her last night, she couldn't believe it. She's still in the same boat, but it's crazy. It's been surreal, and like the waves of messages from the Army and on Twitter, it's just been a crazy, 15, 16 hours now.
I know you weren't in Slack at the time, and we weren't trying to, or in our team community at the time, and we weren't trying to like mess with your juju, so I wasn't tagging you or anything, but oh my God, we went nuts yesterday. I canceled like the showdown last night. I can't look at it. I told everyone I'm not looking at it. We were following the sweat. It was crazy. Daniel Jones, of course, in the third quarter, you had so many more quarters remaining than everyone else. Give us your thought at that point when you're in second, third, and it's the third quarter. You see that you're really in position to win this, but you need a little something from Daniel Jones to make it happen. Like, what's going through your head at that moment?
Yeah, I was kind of checking in every 5 minutes or so. We had the game on in the background. I work at a church, and so I was trying to get ready for the Sunday night experience that we have for high school students and prep for a leader meeting and also have the games on. And so I'm seeing the thing tick up slowly, and all of a sudden I'm in first place, like you said, in the third quarter of a lot of those games. And I remember seeing all the guys I had left. I think I had David Johnson, McCaffrey, those guys were there, Daniel Jones, all the receivers, Evans.
Keenan Allen was going late. Yeah, they were all going late.
Felt like my whole team was there. So, yeah, it was nuts, man. And I think the fourth quarter hit. There was like a couple minutes left in the last two games, and that's when I actually had to shut everything down and get ready for one of our meetings that we have for our leaders. And so I actually went dark and went completely blind before I had any idea what officially happened.
This is unbelievable. I cannot believe that you turned it off and you had some work stuff to do. I mean, first of all, couldn't happen to a better guy. And I mean, my goodness, you're working with children, doing these programs, and like in the background you're winning. I can't even, in the background you're winning $1 million, not even watching. I'm sweating. I had to take a shower. Like, I'm telling you, I was like, hey, I gotta go, guys, I gotta take a break. I had to jump in the shower because I'm sweating this thing. You're helping the kids. It's amazing.
Well, I was sweating too, man. There was stuff I had to get done, but I was still sweating. I actually had to shut everything off. There was a penalty on the Seahawks in that game. I don't know if you're watching that, but they like drove down to the 1 yard line, basically, or the 5 yard line. And a Russell Wilson to Tyler Lockett touchdown would have beat me. But there was a penalty called with 0 seconds left, and I had to literally shut it off thinking, I don't know what the heck's going to happen. The other guy was Austin Eckler. If he would have scored a touchdown, I think it would have been close. So, yeah, it was crazy, man.
We were watching it, and I knew that, there was somebody also right behind you with a Jameis Winston to Mike Evans stack. And so, at first we're like, Evans good. No, Evans bad. If he scores a touchdown, bad. And the other thing was, and of course, for everybody listening, we're going to get into how the lineup came together. We're doing some background. This is the fun stuff. So, we saw that. And also there was another DFS Army member who was kind of creeping up on you, who had a Russell Wilson to Tyler Lockett stack. There was a couple of those going on. So, I mean, it's really interesting how it worked out. Like if you look at here, I'm just popping on. This is Burns, who writes the shark autopsy for us, and he is in the DraftKings Million with a Wilson to Lockett stack, and we're like, oh shit, it's happening everywhere. So it wasn't just one guy. Like there was a few of these going on yesterday, which were amazing, and we love Burns too, so that was awesome. But hey, one or the other, I'll take it. So let's pop back over to this lineup real quick. But before I get into that, let's talk about your background as a player. So tell me, when did you join DFS Army as a member? And like, are you a professional daily fantasy sports player? Is the pastor children's thing like a side gig? What's your main, is this what you do for a living?
Yeah, I definitely am not a professional DFS player. I joined the Army a couple years ago just because I wanted to get better and feel like I wasn't just throwing money away when I played. I've played like, year-long fantasy leagues um, for a long, long time, but it just felt like the daily stuff, there was some different elements of fun there. So jumped into the Army a couple years ago, and it's even been pretty casual, I think, for the most part. There's a couple times I've gone all in on stuff, but yeah, my gig is a student pastor. That's what I do full time, and the DFS stuff is on the side.
That's freaking amazing. Now, I do remember you winning a pretty big MLB contest about 6 months ago. No, not even that long ago. This is probably what gave you that budget to start maxing
Yes.
out some milli makers. But I do recall you winning maxing out and winning an MLB rally a couple months back. That's how you got that swag that you're wearing. We're gonna get you some more swag. We might have to get your wife some swag. I've got some ladies swag because you've already got some DFS Army.
I got a couple young kids, man. 3 years old, 1 year old. Let's maybe some onesies. I don't know. I gotta figure something out.
Man, I got to tell my wife we need to add some DFS Army onesies. Potentially, that would actually really work. But she'd kill me for all the sizes and having to maintain them. But so let's talk about, are you into, like, is MLB your thing and NFL? What's your favorite sport for DFS purposes?
Yeah, MLB is definitely, that's my go-to. I played baseball growing up. Can't do anything but slow pitch softball now, but a huge Cubs fan, and I love baseball, man. So that's my number one, and football's close behind, but it's definitely a number two.
Cool. And one of the things we were talking about before we went live on the air was kind of a lot of what we've noticed and been really pressing the issue with recently is terms of the similarity between MLB and NFL in the sense of both being fairly high variance sports and also both being sports where correlation is really king. Did you bring some of that skill in terms of creating correlated MLB lineups to the table as you were constructing and coming up with your lineups to attack the Fanduel Million maker this week?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I honestly, until you mentioned it, I don't think I thought about it, but totally, like the baseball DFS is kind of what built my my belief on stacking. And so honestly, to a fault, even I've kind of fallen in love with stacking everywhere, but totally, like the stacking correlation in the MLB totally bled over and caused me to tweak the DS the way I did for the NFL too. Yeah.
I love that you just said tweak the DS, because that's what we're going to get into next. Let's talk about, because this is what everybody wants to know, how this lineup came together. Now, again, we were talking off air, and I actually asked you if how you set up first, if you use the Domination Station optimizer to create these lineups, which
yep.
Okay, good. So that makes me that's great. We had so many people finishing in the top of various contests this week. I mean, a lot of our members play on the nickel contest, for example, to catch some practice with the optimizer. We had like 3 lineups in the top 10 out of like 450,000, which is very unusual. And even if you look here in the leaderboard for the Fanduel Million, I mean, you weren't the only DFS Army sub that kind of found their way up here. There were some others that got there. Look at that with a 0 point.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, but ouch. But there were some other subs, including Burns, who wound up with a Wilson, Lockett, Kamara game stack as well. So the stacking approach and sort of the way that the Domination Station makes that happen is, I think, a very important component to finishing in the top of these tournaments. But let's talk about how your lineup came together specifically. So you used the Domination Station optimizer, and we were talking off air, and you actually used the original method, not the newer stacking system that we've just come up with, in beta mode, so to speak. But you said that you kind of tried to create those same style of lineups, but sort of with a little more manual process involved. So let's take a look over at the Domination Station and get a kind of a feel for what I think, how you'd mentioned this came together. So you said that, give me an idea of what got you on Daniel Jones and kind of the distribution that you used this week, first of all.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of tools and stuff within the DFS Army. And I mean, couple different places I usually start are the coach's notes. You just brought them up right there. That's how I build my player pool. There might be a couple one-off exceptions based on just kind of blind hunches, but like for this past week, my player pool came from your notes and Cash Keg's notes, and then from there, there's a podcast that I listened to. There's a training video that I watched just to kind of help refresh my memory and give me a better idea how to use the domination station, and all those things together, and I ended up with that lineup.
Amazing. So you'd worked on the notes. So give me an idea of like your quarterback exposures that you'd set up this week. I mean, you told me that your big game theory move. Tell me what was the big game theory move? Because most of the exposure this week was probably focused on Mahomes and Jackson. Yeah.
So one thing that you guys are always talking about is taking a stand. If you want to win a GPP, you got to take a stand somewhere. And so as crazy as that can be, and stressful as that can be, I decided that, you know what, feel like Mahomes and Jackson, they'll probably be at least 20%, 25% combined ownership this week. So I just decided to fade those guys so I could put more exposure into guys like Daniel Jones and Kyler Murray and some of those cheaper quarterbacks.
Nice. And yeah, I love that other game with Kyler Murray and Kyle Allen as well, obviously, but a little bit more so, I would say, on DraftKings this past week. So how much exposure? Now, you put in the Jones lineup, right? A Jones stack. And I'm just going to bring it up on the domination station screen here, like what that kind of looks like.
Yeah.
So essentially, you did a Daniel Jones stack, and you said stack quarterback Daniel Jones with 2 of wide receiver, tight end, running back from the same team.
Yep.
And then we always do an opposing team comeback. So you did probably no less than 1 of. Did you leave the RB? Tampa doesn't have an RB.
Did not have the RB in there. Nope.
Nope. It wouldn't have. They don't have one. So no less than 1 of WRTE from the opposing team. Is that the basics?
That's
of
exactly
it right
what
there?
it was. Yep.
Now, had you used, let's say, the new stacking beta system, it might have looked like this. Essentially the same idea, but all in one little screen where you'd say, Daniel Jones, what exposure did you do?
I want to say 10% for Jones.
So it was 10%. Listen, this was amazing, by the way. He's 1% owned. You put 10% exposure, and that's the way to do it. I mean, you got to either be over the market or don't bother, right?
Yep.
So 10% exposure, and if you look at the players that pop up, now it starts to seem pretty obvious. All right. Who are the available players? Well, all of these guys, here's what when I set up the tool, the first thing I always do is get rid of, anybody kind of below 3 or 4 fantasy points, just so they don't bother my system. And a 2-man, I mean, you only had 3 choices and only had 2 down here. So if you made 15 lineups at 10% of 150, there's a really good chance that a couple of them fell on Ingram, Shepard, Evans.
Yep, totally. I had a few of those because the pool was so narrow there. Yep.
I would imagine that there was a few. Now, the thing that made the lineup so special was some of these other spots. So, I mean, there was some chalk here and there was some low ownership. I really, the Mark Ingram play, amazing. Now, let's look at the lineup itself. So give me an idea of how much, do you remember how much Mark Ingram exposure you had? I mean, obviously he's mentioned in the notes.
Yeah, I want to say I had close to
play.
20% of Ingram. And a part of the thought process was he's in the notes. The other side of it was part of me fading Lamar Jackson meant I had to think that Ingram was going to get those touchdowns, because it wasn't that Baltimore was going to get shut out. It was, I think these cheap quarterbacks can score close to the same amount, but also I think Ingram's going to vulture a lot of the touchdowns from Lamar anyway. So why not just stop at the fade? Let's input another player there.
This is the brilliance of it. Okay. I don't remember if we talked about this in any of the lead up pods, but when you have a chalk game and everybody is going on it in a certain way, this is kind of like an MLB. I'll give you the MLB example. Okay. And here's my MLB example. Everybody's loading up on some pretty good but not great pitcher. What happens is, so that pretty good pitcher who seems to be the best or the highest owned on the slate is showing up at 30-40% ownership. So the sharp player says, let me stack the lineup against that pitcher so that if the chalk blows up, which happens all the time, I'm the one who's benefiting not only from having faded that guy, or essentially you're benefiting here not only from fading Jackson, but also for the fact that everybody who was on Jackson didn't play Ingram because those two are completely not correlated. So you'd specifically disallow Ingram from any Lamar Jackson type lineups. And if he was going to be, so you actively were thinking, if I fade this, I need to play these running backs because that game is scoring. It's just a matter of where those touchdowns are going to come from.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Amazing. Now, one of the other things we talked about a lot in the preseason, did you watch the NFL stacking video that I did preseason?
I did. Yep.
Okay. No, I hope, was that a source of inspiration?
Absolutely, it was. I'm not even just blowing smoke. That's the truth. Yep.
Oh, that's so awesome, man. I'm like on cloud nine for you. Can't even get more excited. But one of the things we talked about are secondary correlations, and I don't know if this was on purpose or this just kind of popped in here, but as I was looking over the lineup and I looked over a lot of the winning lineups, everybody put together, and I see here you've got McCaffrey and David Johnson. So you've got opposing player from this other game that we really targeted as a play to the over game this week. Was that done on purpose, or you think that kind of just popped up that way, just how it went?
No, I think it was done on purpose. We talked a little bit before we went on air, and I couldn't remember what rule I had set up. But a big part of me setting up the way I did with the stacks was to try and manipulate what that beta tool would have given me, even with the opposing stack. I can't remember what the terminology is for that.
We call it a secondary stack that's not connected to the quarterback. A game stack that's connected to the quarterback.
Yep.
And, I'll show you kind of one way. Like there are ways to, like if you'd use the old stacking method, this is the new method. Secondary stack just automatically pops in, and it's going to grab some version of one of these when you do it this way, right? And you'd have your quarterback, and then let me see if, hang on, try to run this. Hold on a second. I have a lot of my own rules in here, so but let's say we did 15 lineups like you did. Let's see what happens. But a secondary stack should pop up in every single lineup. I didn't test this out before, so I'm not sure if this is actually going to work. But yeah. Oh, okay. I mean, so this is. Let's see what happens here. I'm just giving it a quick run, but you'll see when you run this, there'll be a secondary stack in every one of these lineups of some sort or another. So there'll always be, okay, you've got your Daniel Jones. This one did a Daniel Jones, Barkley, Mike Evans, Sterling Shepard stack. So very close, right? We're almost there. Then you have a secondary stack in every lineup. So it might be Arizona, Cardinals defense, David Johnson. So it's in there. So, but to set it up with the older method, what you would have done is say stack Christian McCaffrey with at least one of, and then name like 5 players on the opposing team that might be a stack. So one of Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, David Johnson, and something like that to create this sort of a lineup. Now, man, I still want to dive a little bit deeper into. You had sent me over some pictures from your player pool from this past week. And I think a lot of the questions that people want to know are, who were your highest exposures and what were your highest limits? I'm just going to pop up some of these on the screens. So here we are. Screen's still open. You did 10% tight end in the flex.
Yep.
2 unique players, 150 lineups, all the standard things checked off. A little bit of randomization in there, not too much. Won't want too much. A little bit. Okay, and you've got everything else pretty standard. So let me just take a scroll through some of these screenshots and some of your likes. You had a love on here's a like here, 55. So what was your highest exposure? It looks like San Francisco 49ers defense popped up a lot. Did you have 55% exposure to that defense?
I did. Yep. I think I ended up with 55.
Unbelievable. Very risky, but what I like about it and what I taught that is a risky move. Defense is, and the defense didn't help you here. That was not what won it, but luckily no real defenses went crazy this week. So paying down was what helped you. In other words, everybody was paying up $5,000 for Patriots or Cowboys each delivered, between 8 to 12 points. Okay, whatever.
Exactly. That was part of the other side of it was, okay, I can get San Francisco against Mason Rudolph and a depleted Steeler team. And because I didn't pick guys like Mahomes or Jackson, that allowed me to get to the point where I could have two relatively studly running backs in the lineup. And I mean, close to three. Ingram's been really good this year. So that was the other side of the strategy was, hey, it's going to be tough for most people to get two solid running backs in their lineup. Let's figure out how we can make that happen with the defense.
Incredible. I'm just going to run through some of these exposure screenshots. So here is this looks like the QB exposures. And as you said, kind of stayed away from, you got Jameis Winston, 15%, Jones. So this was a big focus game across the board for you with with almost 25% exposure to just this game.
Yep.
Very cool. Kyler Murray was a big one for us this week, and Kyle Allen, although I liked him a lot more on DraftKings for the cheaper relative salary that we got for Allen, but he did great. So a pretty tight QB pool. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players, 150 lineups. That's about right. Could go more or less. Let's see what else we've got going on here. All right, so let's look at some of these exposure limits. I assume that when you're putting in a max, that's because you're hitting the max. Is that about right? Like you run it and you're like, okay, I'm getting 90% Christian McCaffrey. Let me set it to 55. That's as much as I want.
That's pretty much it.
Cool. So for the most part, as we look at these maxes, how did you? I got on David Johnson late. Did you kind of? I was like only Saturday and Sunday I started loving David Johnson. He didn't do that special, but that was way over the market. You've got your field projected ownerships here.
Yeah,
So,
I think with Johnson, it was, even though I had some exposure to Kyle Allen, it was, hey, there's a real chance that he might be a bum this game, and they might just be handing the ball off to David Johnson. That was kind of the thinking there. It didn't pan out quite as well as I'd hoped, but that was the thought process.
So it's almost the same process that came up with Mark Ingram. And look at this. Forced Mark Ingram as a min into... So Mark Ingram essentially was probably not showing up in lineups initially. So this was a conscious decision to say, I want Mark Ingram in at least 15%. Did you get exactly 15% of Ingram?
I think by the end of it, I tweaked it to the point where he ended up spitting out around 20%. But okay. Yeah, at the beginning, he wasn't showing up at all. So I had to force him in.
Cool. Very cool. And I see, some likes on some of these guys to just force in some players that you wanted, a little Rex Burkhead late. So yeah, this is pretty standard stuff. You're going to go overweight on some spots and hope they hit. Obviously, Zeke was a little bit of a disappointment, but between McCaffrey and Cook and, of course, Mark Ingram, this should have been a really good overall. Aaron Jones did really well. So this should have been, and Mixon did really well. So a couple of these guys. So this should have been a really good just overall run of lineups. It's hard to look at your return after there's $1 million in there and say, well, I made $1,150 and be excited
right.
about, getting your money back on the rest. But did you? I'm just curious.
I think I was around $1,100 in addition to the $1 million. So I was close, but I didn't quite get there. Everything was bunched up like pretty much right on the edge, right in that line, split in the middle on the payout line. So it was
cash line.
Yep.
What a lot of people don't understand, and I like that we just brought that up, is when you mass multi-enter, and how long have you been doing? Do you mass multi-enter like frequently every day, or how do you do it?
No.
Oh my God.
Usually with the NFL, I started doing it last year, and I just pinpoint a couple weeks. Usually when the Bears aren't playing on a Sunday, so I can get rid of my bias a little bit, which ends up helping me in showdown slates usually. But usually just a couple weeks throughout the year, I'll mass multi-entry NFL. And like you said, the baseball winnings, actually, I had it planned out. I was going to do the first 5 weeks of NFL this year and see how the bankroll shook out after that.
Now you've got to mass multi-enter every week because, like,
oh, geez.
I mean, you can't not. It's all the money in the account. You gotta use it. All right, let's just. I'm going to continue going through your player pool because I know everybody is dying to see this. So heavy exposure to Zach Ertz, pretty chalk. Evan Ingram, not chalk. but a great play. A great play this week. Not super chalk. Did you get the full 30% of Ingram? I imagine you did because you had almost 25% stacks of just this game.
That's right. Yep. I had Ingram and Sterling Shepard in a bunch of those Daniel Jones lineups.
You had to. I mean, I see you forced a little bit of OJ Howard in there, but he really wasn't an exciting play at all this week either, although it's a good matchup. How much Howard exposure did you wind up with? Is it 6? About right?
6 on the dot.
Yeah, so essentially the tool was always, when you did that 2-man stack, Jones probably almost always wound up, and Winston probably almost always wound up with Evan Ingram in those lineups. So it should have been very focused on just those, which is a great way to approach this.
Yep, cool. That's right.
And let me just everybody wants to see. So yeah, and just standard stuff. So I'm seeing the only real limits were put on. Yeah, Deontay Johnson, by the way, did well. Not a lot of people realize that. He did very well yesterday. I think he caught at least 1 touchdown. But I'm looking for limits. So what was the highest exposure you had across this slate to any one player?
I think it was Christian McCaffrey. And I thought it was 40%. I think after seeing that, he was at 55%. He was at the max of what I set. And then pretty much from there, everybody was 40% or less. So Evans was pretty close to 40%. I had Ingram at 20%. Sterling Shepard
got on.
up
Evans
there.
Was one of the best plays on the slate. In hindsight, right? 7,100, reasonable price. Only 13% owned. Amazing matchup. Obviously, he had a 2 standard deviation unit type of performance yesterday, and obviously he's part of the stack. But 40% means you were well over the market on him, not just in these stacks, but across the board. So tell me, what got you on Mike Evans? I think that was one of. I love the reasoning behind Mark Ingram so much, and it's so important. I really hope that sinks into everybody watching this about. If there's a game that's chalk, you think, what is the path where the people who play that game that's chalk get screwed? And it was if Mark Ingram steals all the tutties. So tell me about the Mike Evans pick and what got you on that one.
Yeah, with Evans, I know that there were several people within the Army. I know you and Keg were super high on Evans. I want to say one of you guys called him for a breakout week, and you were right on. I think Chris Godwin is a guy that is actually on my year-long fantasy football team, and he blew up last week. And so I thought, okay, this guy's probably going to be chalk. Let's just stick with the taking a stand thing, and let's go Evans, who I think is a better receiver anyway. So I think I had like 5 or 10% Godwin. I had those two in a lot of my Jameis Winston stacks, but the non-Winston stacks, I pretty much stuck with Evans throughout.
Yeah, that was key. I mean, the Winston stacks, because it was a 2-man, it was either Godwin Evans, Evans Howard, or Godwin Howard. Like there were only so many paths,
right?
Because one of the nice things about the Bucs as a team is that there's just not that many people on there that are scoring fantasy points. I mean, it's Evans, it's Godwin, or it's pretty much been just those two because Howard hasn't done a thing. So it's those two guys. So when you do a 2-man stack, and that probably harmed your Winston stacks a little bit more and brought the Jones stacks into such a great spot, because those stacks wound up with, again, 2 of Barkley, Shepard, or Evan Ingram, because those were only the 3 choices. And Barkley being as expensive as he was, a lot of times you're going to default to the other 2 guys. And obviously, I think one, yeah, if you look at the notes, I mean, we really liked Shepard here, 3-star play. Not a lot of people were on Shepard because he had come off a concussion and everybody kind of forgot who he was and like what his role was or something. Sometimes that happens. So that's really amazing. Really amazing stuff. Now, all right. Tell me what you plan to do. Tell me what you plan to do with the million. Are you buying a new house? Are you paying off a mortgage? Are you quitting you're definitely not. Somebody said I would quit my job. This man is a youth pastor. He's not quitting his job. That's like the most satisfying job in the world. Like whatever else would you ever want to do? So tell me what you plan to do with the money as a new FanDuel millionaire.
That's a good question. I think I'd probably have a more specific answer once my wife starts believing that this is true. But
She'll
paying
believe
off.
it when she sees that money hit.
Right.
FanDuel is good like that. They will wire you funds, and she's gonna have to believe it.
It's crazy, man. I probably pay down some of the house and the car payment we have. We had some major appliance malfunctions in our house, like the HVAC system went out, washer dryer went out, all within the same month. So we'll get to pay that stuff down. And there's some different investing we want to do in our kids' college funds and stuff like that. So still don't know what to do with a lot of it. Connect with a financial guy for sure. And obviously we're going to give some to the church too. But I think a lot of that's still open-ended right now. It's still surreal, honestly. I still can't even believe it.
How, I mean, to know that yesterday, was just a normal day. You're just making lineups in the morning, degenning out. Your wife was probably giving you a little bit of a hard time about how much time you spend on, putting your lineups together. When do you make your lineups? Is it the night before, morning? You said, actually, you have to share this part of the story. When did you get the edit in for this? And tell me kind of your process.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong about my wife questioning how much time I spend on sports. But usually I like to look at stuff at night after the kids go to bed. I'll listen to the podcast and start taking some notes and have my final submissions on Sunday, but I didn't get a chance to do that. And so I actually went to prepare some stuff for work around 10 in the morning. My wife hung out with the kids and I'm like, you know what, let's get some lineups going because this feels like a good week and the Bears aren't on the slate. So let's have this be, I talked about this being one of the mass multi-entries. Let's make it happen. So I tweaked all the DS as much as I could. And I legitimately think I hit the submit button at like 11:56 or 11:57 with just a couple minutes left.
So with minutes to spare, you had essentially, your process, as everybody knows, or not everybody knows, the process for mass multi-entry is first thing you're going to do is submit essentially a set of dummy lineups or reservation lineups. I don't put dummy lineups in ever. Every lineup, even when I do that, they're real lineups just in case I don't get my edit in. I at least kind of like what's going on. And here's the cat, and she is going to join us on the broadcast here. I cannot stop it. But oh my God, she's sitting on my earpiece. Okay.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, the cat is here. So where was I? I lost all train of thought. So yeah, I always put in, you want to put in real lineups so that just in case you don't get your edit in, at least what you've put in is, somewhat decent. So did you have something like that going and then you were just doing a last second edit?
That's usually my plan. I'm the same way, but because I decided so late to make it happen, I literally reserved right away with just some dummy lineups and then had to get everything in from there. So yeah, I was a couple minutes away from not a good look. That's for sure.
You would not have been the first person that didn't get their edits in time. That does happen, and it's unfortunate. But so you submit your dummy lineups, you're working the DOM station all the way right up to the last second, and your process is along the course of the week. You listen to all the podcasts, you check out the coaches' notes, you do your own research. Listen, we all watch football. We all have our own ideas and leans and stuff like that as well. And using all that information, put it all together, create stacked lineups using the domination station. You purposefully faded the chalk at wide receiver, and even more than just fading the chalk, played the play that would cause the chalk to fail, the Mark Ingram play, which is if the chalk fails, it's probably because this guy is going beast.
That's right.
So a guy who was going to be 6% owned, a guy who was, let's see where we had projected him for ownership here, just so we can confirm. We had him projected 1.96%,
and a 4-star play.
4-star play, but only 1% owned. And can't ignore the game totals. We know the Ravens are projected to have plenty of scoring opportunities in this one. So amazing. You loaded up on some chalk here. Dalvin Cook, Zeke Elliott, Christian McCaffrey, all 5-star or 4-star plays. And essentially got onto a low-owned quarterback, wide receiver, tight end game stack that worked out incredibly well because there was enough lineups made out of 150 here that 15 versions of that Daniel Jones stack landed you on the right trio enough time to also hit on Ingram and all that. What about Keenan Allen? What got you? That's the final play on the lineup. I don't want to skip anything because this is just such a special thing here. Keenan Allen, he's been great. I mean, was this just a, hey, he fits, or the optimizers tossing him in everywhere? Because the optimizer was all over Keenan Allen this week.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was partly due to the optimizer being so high on him. But it did feel like Phillip Rivers was going to have to throw the ball a bunch against Houston. And so it wasn't a totally blind play, but at the same time, I think the optimizer had a lot to do with that, him being in there as much as he was. He was another probably 25%er, I want to say, as far as exposures.
Amazing. I don't have anything else for you, man. This was just unbelievable. Do you plan to keep going full blast like MME every weekend now going forward? And is your wife going to continue to give you a hard time spending a lot of time making lineups?
I think she might be sold on the DFS stuff for now. I'll probably keep up at the same pace I've been doing, and not every week, but certainly something that when I have a spot and when I have some time to play, I'm gonna make it happen. So I know for tonight I gotta represent my Bears. We joked about Trubisky being in that MVP slot, but I think that's gonna be one of my stands. So
I'm gonna be playing a Bears onslaught tonight just to follow that lead. And yeah, man, I'm all about the Bears offense tonight. Well, it's gonna happen. Let me ask you one other question because I just thought of it. So you're prepping for the youth pastor role. Got to turn off the game. Can't watch. Got prep it. Got a meeting. Okay, so now it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whatever o'clock it was in the Midwest in Chicago, and you've won the million. You're with the kids at the meeting. Like, are they going crazy? Do you share that this happened, or I mean, what goes on?
I didn't share it. I actually didn't even look. My phone kept buzzing, and I finally looked down probably around 7:30-ish, 8 o'clock Central Time, and I was just like a billion Twitter notifications. I think you had posted something, and every time someone liked it, I was getting a buzz, and I'm like, whoa, oh my gosh.
Again, I waited until after it was final to tag you. I had to wait, but I was like, I can't wait to tag him.
It's crazy. And truth be told, like I was skeptical, and I'm like, you know what? There's going to be some stat adjustment or something. I just want to just be patient and see how this all shakes out. So I didn't really shared with one other person and my wife, and that's pretty much it to this point. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but yeah, I had to shut the game off. There were a couple final drives that would have potentially taken me out of first place, and had to shut it off with like a couple minutes left in a couple of those games. So legitimately, the Twitter notification was how I first found out that I won.
Oh my goodness. Well, one thing I will share with you in the background is when we within DFS Army saw that this was going on, we saw it in first second, we saw the quarters remaining numbers and how the odds did seem to imply that there was a pretty reasonable chance that this was going to hold on. I mean, like everything stopped and everybody was just together, just rooting this on, just going nuts. I mean, we had a couple of different Millie Maker sweats going yesterday. So for me, it was one of my funnest days ever. And that includes days when I've had a big win. Those aren't fun. Those are just like nervous and heart pounding, but this was one of the funnest things ever because we were watching your lineup and we're watching Burns, shoot up the DraftKings Millie Maker, and we're watching, BMC also kind of running up, and we're like, oh my God, if it's not Bobby, it's going to be BMC. And, we had another guy, SEO, his name's SEO, also shooting up the DraftKings Millie Maker at the time. So it was like, I've just never experienced anything like it in all the years of doing DFS Army, where like all of that was going on and the whole group just kind of like stopped everything. And we're just like, who are we rooting for? And everybody was just going nuts for you, man. So it was a lot of fun to be a part of that. I think for myself and for, the other members, even if you weren't there with us, at those times. I was kind of glad you weren't there with us because
yeah, I mean, I don't know who's going to watch this, and I don't want to be just like a total homer, but I will say too, I mean, it's cool because the win I get to talk about this now because of the win, but like genuinely the DFS Army stuff has been so much fun. I mean, people celebrating the win is amazing. I can't tell you how many messages I've gotten and tweets, and even just kind of seeing people like you and Keg so excited has been awesome. But like, no joke, even the win aside, and I promise I'm not, you didn't tell me to say this, and I believe it, and I believed it before the win. There is an experience that's attached to everything, every cost. And the experience that you get at DFS Army with coaches and relationships, and I mean the tools too, that new tool is insane. It's just a different ballgame. And I mean, you pay for an experience every time you spend money. And even without the win, the experience alone, just getting to enjoy the new dimension of sports with this community is special. And I mean that. And I promise you I would have said that even before the win, but now that maybe someone will listen, it's the truth. So kudos to you guys and what you put together, because it's really unique and really special.
Listen, Bobby, I really appreciate those words. It is absolutely what we tried to do in coming up with, in putting the DFS Army team together and, putting this site together. So many years have gone into it, but the focus has always been the community and we all play. And so we're trying to make each other all better at the same time. You see it with the tools. The goal is always, what can I do with this tool that can, for me and my game, help me win more often? It's like, what would I want? And that is the beauty of sort of a player putting this all together instead of some sort of, corporation or something where they don't really know. They're just kind of like trying to do marketing. We're players, man. I play. The reason that we came up with this stacking system, the original and the one that's here now, and of course the newest version, is because I was playing and I was like, I need this in order to play better. Like, I'm missing these things, like the stack by name where you can put in Jones and name his pass catchers, and that's all about what can we do to be better. And of course, the community aspect of DFS Army I love too. So very kind words, man. I really appreciate what you say, because in many ways, this is a long slog for people, and people don't understand, you don't just come in and push a button and print money. DFS is very hard. And I think certain people understand it, but not everybody gets it. So it's really important to sort of point out, hey, Bobby's been here for 2 years, just grinding away. And one day he's a millionaire. That's like great, man. I'm waiting for my million.
It's got to be coming, man. It's got to be coming.
I'm taking inspiration from this now. Now, like, I'm so inspired. I can't wait for next week to, stack up some lineups and do this again. So I think the end gist was, take stands on certain players. You had over 50% exposure in a few spots. In your case, it was if I'm going to fade the chalk, let me play the situation that causes that chalk to fail with the Mark Ingram play in the lineup. Of course, a game stack. Did you do any lineups that weren't game stacked where you had 2 from one team and 1 from the opposing team?
No, I am sometimes to a fault all in on stacks, probably because of baseball. So every lineup I had was stacked in some way, at least one and one. So
some of the lineups were one-man stacks, Josh Allen, John Brown type of stack with no other player because they don't know other player. That's the nice thing about being able to control it name by name, where you can say, one name, and then is it a game stack or a team stack? And the other system works basically the same. You just pop the names in there. That's the beauty of that. So everything was stacked, and it was just a question of how much and the fade. Unreal. All right, Bobby, we're going to let you go. This was amazing. Thank you so much. You are now officially DFS Army royalty. Like that, like this will never be forgotten. This is, there's only so many contests with $1 million at the top. There's literally only 16 of them for Fanduel, or 17 or some number like that every year. There's only that for DraftKings. So you're part of an elite group, and no one's ever going to take that away from you. I wish your family the best and to do great things with this money. I hope the tithe does well with this win as well. And you like that? I prepped that before.
You're on it, man. Well done.
I prepped that before the show. I did a little research, and I hope everybody does well. And you know, I can't wait to chat more. You're going to get a lot of messages in Slack of congratulations and how did you do it. Don't feel obliged to answer them all. There's going to be a lot of that, but I know everybody's going to want to hear in person what you did and your experience and all of that. So we'll be doing a lot more talking in DFS Army chat. Thank you so much for doing this video with me, man. This was awesome. This was awesome for me too. I love hearing your process and how everything came together. So I look forward to, you know, a lot more good times and a lot more winning with you and a lot more just social interaction that we'll have.
Yeah, well, seriously, specifically thanks to you, Kevin, and I mean all of DFS Army. You guys basically enabled just a totally normal Chicago sports fanatic who has an hour and a half to do lineups to make this happen. So cannot say enough about the Army, and man, I'm excited to continue to be a part of the community.
Helping average Joes compete like pros.
There it is.
That's what it is.
It's the truth.
Compete on a level playing field. Why should somebody else have an advantage over us? That's what it was all about. I fucking love it. Sorry, I was trying not to be swearing in this one because you're a pastor, so I try to keep it clean.
Oh, it's okay. It's totally fine, man. I promise.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right, my man. Thanks again so much, and we will see you in chat. Enjoy the funds. Live it up. Celebrate. Buy your wife like the best gift ever, please.
Whatever. That might be a minivan for her, but yeah.
Even no, not the minivan. Get her like the Porsche. Okay, get her the Porsche SUV. Like make it extra special, and you know, more good things to come. So thanks again for coming on and saying all those nice words. I appreciate it.
Let's keep the Army wins coming. Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Take care, my man.
All right. See ya.